Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. On today's episode, we're going to interview Mark Burton. He is the founding CEO of the International Armoring Corporation. IAC is a designer and manufacturer of armored cars using lightweight armoring materials. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, and follow us. Also, I'd like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities, so check them out. It's something you can buy for yourself or as a gift for someone you love. A live 15-second call with a celebrity is $19.95, and a live 30-second call is $29.95. You can purchase the calls for yourself or as gifts for someone you know. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's say hello to Mark. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So, for the benefit of our audience, I know that you manufacture various degrees of bullet resistance and protection into your vehicles. And for the benefit of our audience, what are those levels of protection?
Well, we generally start with what we refer to as a B4, which is a European standard, and that's against high-powered handguns. And then our most popular level is a B6, which is against high-powered rifles, okay? And we're talking about protection in the passenger compartment as well as other areas. And then the highest level that we do in these passenger vehicles is what's referred to as a B7, which is an armor-piercing type of level, okay? The difference you can say quickly is the handgun protection, for example, the glass is 21 millimeters. And then in the B7, the glass is 76 to 78 millimeters, which is 3 inches thick. So it varies tremendously based on what the perceived threat is.
So is the glass really glass, or is it some kind of composite material?
It's a laminate material. There's basically 3 materials in that glass. There's a leaded glass, there's an acrylic, and then there's a polycarbonate. The leaded glass is on the exterior side. There's multiple layers of it. And that's for the physics to slow down the round, okay, to have controlled delamination. You want the layers to separate. So you have a glass, acrylic, polycarbonate, laminate. It's sealed into one. So it looks like the original glass. It's got the same paint, blackout area, the same dot matrix. All those things are the same.
So I'm sure our audience is going to want to know, so I'm going to ask you, how does B7 protection compared to, say, for example, the president's limousine? Is that several orders of magnitude beyond that?
The president's is several levels of magnitude beyond that. We really don't even have a level for what the president has. Gotcha. And most people, in fact, it's a very tight circle, probably know what level the president has on his vehicle or what it will stop.
So tell us about your manufacturing process. From the time an order comes in until you deliver it, what's that timeline typically like?
Well, right now it's about 10 weeks. We used to be about 6 weeks, but the demand has increased tremendously, and I can talk about that later. But what we do is we take an original vehicle. It could be coming off the dealer floor. It could be coming from a private customer. And when we bring it in, we completely strip it. Okay, because these vehicles are armored from the inside out. In other words, we want to maintain the original appearance of these vehicles. We want to armor the entire passenger compartment, protect them. And then we want to maintain the original performance. But we do everything from the inside, in the cavities. We hide it the best we can. So on the outside, you can't tell the difference. Even sometimes on the inside, we've gotten so good that you can't tell you're in an armored passenger vehicle. Now, you can a little bit when you open the doors. It's going to be a little bit heavier, but the glass is the major contributor to that, because that's the heaviest component now in our vehicles as far as the armoring install. And then we take all the parts off, and then we put them all back together or all back in, and we modify them. We have to modify them to accept the modifications that we've done, but we use every component that we've taken off the vehicle, we've put it back in, except the original glass and the original motors in the doors to operate the windows.
So I'm assuming that when somebody orders one of your high-end vehicles, let's say an SUV that is outfitted with ballistic level protection B7, I'm assuming that that takes longer and is much more expensive. Is that a fair assumption?
That's a fair assumption. It's going to usually take between 2 and 4 weeks longer, and cost about $20,000 to $25,000 more.
Interesting. And let's say you deliver an armored vehicle to a customer and a year later he's attacked but survives. How often do old customers send back armored vehicles to be fixed after an attack? Does that happen, or is it just cheaper to buy a new one?
It does happen. It is probably cheaper depending on the degree of the attack. If it's been 2 or 3 rounds in the glass, that we can do fairly easily. We already have the designs, the patterns, and we know and we can actually do it in the field. We can send a technician, or we have facilities all around the world, and so we can just send an individual there. It depends on the type of attack. If it's a bombing, like an IED, it's just best that they get a new car. Okay, because the damage is too great. So usually if it's done by a handgun or a rifle, we can repair it fairly quickly and less expensive than a new car.
And also, I have to imagine that anybody who has just survived an attack on their vehicle wants to be without that safety for as little time as possible. So they want another replacement quickly.
That's correct. That's correct. They get used to that, what we refer to as that peace of mind.
Yeah. So how have armored vehicles been improved over the last 10 years? Have there been any paradigm shifts or dramatic breakthroughs in armoring or in the technology in itself?
In the OPEC areas, there have. For example, when we started ArmorMax using the synthetic fiber laminate versus the steel weighs 13 pounds a square foot. Okay. It's an air hardened, heat treated steel. And we still do use a little bit of that, but we try to minimize it. And when we started, we had a material that was a little less than 8 pounds a square foot. So it was a pretty good savings, 5 pounds per square foot, basically. Well, today, that same material, that ArmorMax material that's lightweight, it's at 2.5 pounds a square foot. So that's been a significant decrease in the added weight. It's important, John, to remember that none of these vehicles were ever made to be armored. Okay. And we have to work within the parameters the vehicle gives us. And most of that has to do with design, as far as putting in that glass, as well as the weight added to that car. And so that's the significant increase. The cars now today are better protected. We're protecting them more completely, as well as the glass is more. It's a clear glass. It doesn't have the distortion like it did before. If you can imagine looking through 2 and 3 inches of glass and multiple layers. In the old days, it was fairly distorted, as well as it delaminated. And so from the standpoint of having to replace it, now it lasts for years and years and years. It's less maintenance. It's the armor's lighter. So the vehicles spend less time in the shop, depending on how you use them, but they spend less time in the shop and they have a longer life.
Now, is the material you were talking about, the lightweight material you were talking about, is that a Kevlar-like material?
No, it's a synthetic fiber laminate. There's combinations like the glass itself. There's combinations of different materials that are laminated together through heat, through pressure, as well as through adhesives.
Okay, so it's something proprietary, I'm assuming.
Yes, it is.
Okay, by the way, I have to tell you, Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan has the Kennedy assassination limousine. I don't know if you've ever seen it in person or photographs of it.
I have.
I've seen it in person. And when you look at it, it seems so primitive by comparison to what's happening these days.
Yeah. Even when I started, I mean, that's how we kind of really leapfrogged in this business is we designed the vehicle, the armor to the vehicle versus the vehicle to the armor, a simple approach. Everything was designed specifically for that vehicle. And even to this day, we maintain that approach. And so these cars look original. Even before that, I mean, you saw cars with flat glass on a Mercedes, if you can imagine. All cars' glass is curved. You put flat glass in there, it'll drive by and you go, ooh. And then it was green and it was ugly and it was thick and it was heavy. And that's that's why our cars were so well received. It took us 6 months to do those first three cars that senator gave us. But then once they got into the market, they were so well received. We went from 6 employees to 120 employees in 90 days after those cars were delivered. So it was kind of an entrepreneurial dream or nightmare, however you want to say, but the change was phenomenal.
Are you guys a publicly held company or privately owned?
We're privately held.
Oh. So every time people watch the news these days, they see more crime and civil unrest going on everywhere. What effect has all this crime had on your sales over the last year?
Huge here in the United States.
Give me a multiple. Are we talking 2x?
Well, we're talking 60 to 70% increase in the last year for the United States, maybe even more. I haven't done the numbers, but just in the month of last month, we sold 28 cars just to the U.S. Okay, which I know that might not sound like a lot, but when you're talking an average ticket price of $150,000 to $160,000, including the car, that is a significant number. And when you consider that in our U.S. plant, and like I said, we have multiple plants around the world. Our U.S. plant, we still do all the head of state vehicles. We've done vehicles for 46 different heads of state, and we do them out of the U.S. facility as well as some other countries. We do vehicles here, but this plant here in the U.S., and we've just expanded to 3 plants here in Utah now. We went from 1 to 3, but this plant used to do about 5% of its business for U.S. customers, just 5%. And right now we're doing 80% plus in this plant for our U.S. customers. So that uncertainty that exists in the market today in the U.S. is a driving force. It could be somebody that's concerned about random acts of violence, just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And we're seeing that on the news, as you mentioned. We have some people that have taken it even more extreme. They believe this may be the end of the social structure like we know it. And they have actually purchased military type of vehicles, not armored, but military type of vehicles, and are having us armor them. Now, these are defensive vehicles. These aren't offensive. Okay, we don't do offensive. We do defensive type of vehicles.
So what kind of military platforms specifically are you armoring?
We're doing the big Oshkosh trucks. Okay, we're doing the big water cannon trucks. Okay, we're doing ambulances. Which is we've done ambulances, but it was usually for the Middle East. But now we're doing them here in the United States.
Are most of those military platforms for foreign customers, or do you have American customers who want that sort
They're all for the U.S.
Really?
Now. Yeah.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, they want the ability, if they have to be able to get out of a dangerous situation. And so, and there's other people. I mean, that's what I'm saying is they take it to different levels. It might be somebody, and part of that is economics, obviously. Those type of vehicles require more resources than, say, you take an SUV, a small SUV like an Explorer or something like that, and you just put glass and doors in it in a level B4, and what that'll do is that'll stop handguns. You don't have complete coverage, but it's much more economical.
Do you drive your own armored vehicle? Do you have one, or is that not necessary?
No, I test drive a lot of them, though. I mean, there's probably not a week that goes by that I don't, drive them, whether I take them home and, just testing them.
So I'm guessing you routinely get calls from old customers who have survived horrific attacks on their lives and live to talk about those attacks because of the armoring services you provide. Without revealing any names, tell us some of the stories you get from customers who have survived attacks, and feel free to include all the gory details if you can.
Okay. Well, we've had over 300 attacks in 27 years. A good portion of those were during the Iraq War with the subcontractors, that were over there. They needed the protection, and there was a lot of attacks during that time. But some of the attacks that are, that may be more familiar, we had a customer that was fairly wealthy in Mexico, and he was stuck in traffic, Mexico City, and an individual came up to carjack him. And the individual, and he knew he was protected. He was, my customer was in a level B6 car, which you remember that's a high-powered rifle fire protection. And the individual had a handgun. The individual couldn't tell that the car was armored. Okay. And so he came up and he knocked on the door, told the customer to get out of the car. And my customer actually probably gave him the international sign of disgust. And the guy ended up taking one step back and taking 2 shots at my customer. Okay. Now, obviously it was going to stop. The glass came back to the shooter, and the shooter almost bled to death right there in the street. It didn't ricochet the bullet, but the glass is under pressure. And so it kind of boomeranged back to him, if that makes any sense.
The bullet fragments or the glass itself?
The glass itself, the shards of glass. Remember, it's a heavy leaded glass. It's not like tempered like the little pieces that normal glass are.
Right.
Well, my customer, although he knew that he was going to be protected and that he was okay, thought he was having a heart attack. And it was such a traumatic experience for him that's what he was thinking. And it took him a few seconds to realize that he was okay. And then he drove up on the curb and drove away. And what he was actually having was an anxiety attack. And he ended up spending 2 days in the hospital. Now, no rounds went through, but fortunately, he survived the anxiety attack. Now, I had another situation of a gentleman in Central America that a very, very bright individual. He got all the options, okay? Not only the armoring package, but there's sometimes our customers request a little James Bond stuff, you know? He had the smoke screen, he had the tack dispenser, he had those type of things, and a little bit more offensive, okay? And what we recommend our customers do is hit the gas and get out of there. Well, in this case, he panicked when he was being under attack. And he opened his door, he stopped, he hit all his buttons. So everything just went right there where it was, you know, the tacks, everything. He wasn't even driving. It just went right there on the ground. He opened his door and started returning fire, okay, shooting at the people. Well, he called me the next day and he said, your car has, you know, the bullets went through the car I armored with you. And of course, your heart sinks, you know, because we've never had a defeat before. Okay, all these materials and all these cars are certified independently. And so I flew down there, and when I looked at the car, I saw obviously what was wrong with it. The bullets were going from the inside, trying to go out. What had happened was when he'd opened the door and started shooting back, the bullets came by him on the inside of the car. And so it shot the inside of the windshield and not from the outside in. Okay. So you never know how you're going to react under those type of situations. Now, there was just one last one, and it's really kind of a general statement, is we ended up doing 1,500 kits for Hummers during the Iraq conflict. If you remember, there was a tremendous increase in deaths through the IEDs during the Iraq war in 2004, 2005. And part of that was because we did not have enough. Most of the vehicles that were there were soft skin. They weren't armored. And so, and it wasn't practical to be able to send all those vehicles back and rebuild them. And so they asked us to build materials kits so that they can install them in there. And we had a facility in Kuwait, and we started building them in Kuwait, and then we taught them how to install them in the field. Now, it wasn't 100% perfect, okay, how they built, but every single one of those vehicles that were attacked, every single one of those individuals survived. And that's, you know, for us, that's a tremendous satisfaction. Even though we didn't install the armor, we had all the materials for them. We had a hotline. We showed them how to do it there in Kuwait in our facility. And we were successful in saving a lot of lives.
Nice. So, you know, in South America, the violence is now so intense that car dealers are actually offering a new option designed to prevent kidnapping and carjacking. They will custom build a James Bond-like flamethrower into the side of the car to force riders and carjackers away from the vehicle. Now, it's amazing that this sort of thing is actually legal there, but it is. And for those people who've never seen anything or thought this wasn't legal in that part of the world, all you have to do is go to YouTube and watch the car dealer's video. It is unbelievable. Have you ever had customers ask you for anything crazy like that? Any really unusual James Bond-like weapons to be installed in their car?
Well, we've had a few. We've had that request, by the way, and we've refused to do it. It's not that complicated, okay, to be able to do that. I mean, once you know your way around the cars and you know the engineering and everything on the design, there's a couple of things we do that's very common. One is an electric shocking system in the door handles, okay? And what that does is it puts 110 volt current, low amperage into the door handle. So when they go to grab the handle, it's not lethal. It might make them wet their pants, but it prohibits them from being able to grab onto something and open the door. Another thing we have is a pepper gas system. Okay, you have two switches and it ignites two pepper gas grenades around your car. Okay, you have one switch is for the front left and right rear. The other one is for the right front and left rear. Okay, so again, to clear a crowd away from your car. Is it lethal? No. Is it, does it tick you off? Absolutely. Okay. So those are some of the unique things that we have. And again, really what we're trying to encourage, and we understand that not all situations are the same, but what we're trying to encourage is to get away from the dangerous situation. We're trying to give individuals time to react because it takes them a minute, especially when they've been shot at. And I can tell you story after story after story. They said, we didn't even realize we were being shot at for a few seconds. I imagine it was up to 10, 12 seconds that the non-trained mind figured it out. So we want to give them time.
Is that because the sound of the bullets hitting the windows is not what they thought it would sound like?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, any type of shooting, what do they always say on these mass shootings? It sounded like fireworks.
Okay.
Right. And the thumping on your glass, unless it's right in front of you, it still does take a second. So then we want to be able to provide them the ability to escape. And so we're providing them a cocoon, a safe area that doesn't look like a cocoon, but it is a protective cocoon to allow them time to react and the ability to escape.
Have any of the movie studios ever asked you guys to custom build movie vehicles for them?
Yeah, we've actually built for 3 different, for some TV series. Mm-hmm. Okay. We built for CSI New York, and we built for one of the movies. We had our Hummer, one of our H2s in one of the movies.
Have you guys ever explored the possibility of licensing Batmobile replicas that you could manufacture, or Fast and Furious movie replicas that you could manufacture? Have you approached any of the studios with proposals along those lines?
No, we're very busy doing what we do. There's always you can always take more business, but we're trying to keep it within, even though we've done some unique projects. I mean, we've done snowcats for Turkey along the Iraqi border. We did the radomes in the DMZ. So we're engineering right now. We're just finishing up a contract for doing these big trenchers for the Middle East, 100 of them. They're 35-foot trenchers. So they're working in dangerous environments and they need to be protected. So things that people generally don't think of. But as far as Batmobiles, and I know they're out there and things like that, I noticed that Aston Martin just built a new James Bond version, specialty version of their DB5. And I thought that was really cool.
I had a friend who tried to sell me his custom-built Batmobile, and this thing was a thing of beauty. It took years for him to construct, and he actually converted his living room into a showroom for this vehicle.
Yeah,
and
car guys are crazy. I'm a car guy, and I agree. I mean, it's
when he takes his daughter every once in a while. They have Father's Day at school. When he takes his daughter to school in the Batmobile, the police literally have to escort him because he stops traffic on both sides of the freeway when people spot this. Wow. It's amazing. It's a thing of beauty.
That's cool.
But most aftermarket car alarms are easily bypassed or neutralized these days. A company called Simply Safe, which does home alarms, residential alarms, recently revolutionized the alarm business by making it possible for people to install their own wireless home alarms. Have you guys ever explored the possibility of doing something innovative and affordable in the car alarm business?
No, again, we focused on capitalizing on the material, our secret sauce, the Armor Max material, the lightweight, and put it into a number of different applications, predominantly in passenger vehicles.
What was the most heavily armored and expensive vehicle you've ever built for a customer?
We built a luxury bus for a head of state, and it was about $2.5 million just for the armoring. And then on top of that was the cost of the bus. So
If a client asks you to build him an armored limousine as strong and protected as the presidential limousine, is that something you could build? And if so, what do you estimate that would cost, and how long would it take to build?
you know, we could do it if we had the information, as to what it would stop. We have an idea of what it can do. I think we can make it better because we have lighter weight materials. But it would probably be about the same, $2 to $2.5 million, including the vehicles. That vehicle is it looks like a Cadillac, but it really is it's got a truck, huge truck chassis underneath it. So it's kind of like NASCAR, where it looks like one thing, but really is another thing underneath it. But we could do it. I mean, we design every time there's a new model out, we have to redesign all the glass. So that's not an issue. We can, and it's just a matter of making the glass thicker and modifying the vehicle to accept that glass.
So I'm assuming these vehicles are essentially tax deductible for the buyer, if his company's buying them.
It's companies and it's individuals, and depending on where they go, they're tax free. Okay, I mean,
what does it cost to ship an armored SUV from Utah to Mexico or Utah to Moscow?
From Utah to Mexico, it's Mexico City. It runs around $1,400 to $1,600 on ground. Okay. To Moscow, it'll run about $3,800 insured. Okay. If we put it on a plane, which some customers of ours do, they fly them to where they're at. You'd be up in the mid-20s to late $20,000.
So we've been hearing that because of recent events, the sale of bullet resistance jackets has exploded. I know you're not in that business, but have you ever thought of getting into it?
Yeah, we've been asked on numerous occasions. That's a very competitive business. It's almost a race to the bottom. The certain countries have in Asia have flooded the market with a lower, very low cost. And so, we've kind of stayed out of that. Even with the Armor Max material, it would be very beneficial. The challenge with the Armor Max material is the energy still passes through. The bullet doesn't. So it's okay when it's in the side of a door, but when it's against your body, you're still going to suffer blunt trauma. So we've kind of stayed out of that business.
So we are in the innovation business, and so we're always conducting research for clients. And we did a little bit of research prior to this on the engineering and materials being used by the industry and on the new materials that will be coming online soon. And we found that researchers at North Carolina State University have created a metal foam, if you can believe that is so strong that it shatters armor-piercing bullets upon impact. Now you can watch this video on YouTube. It is amazing. It's as though the bullets, armor-piercing bullets, look like they're made out of glass when they hit this material. They just explode. So the researcher, a woman by the name of Afsana Rabi, she says that her material is the strongest one yet. There's nothing else like it on the market. The porous material absorbs energy better than sheet metal due to the air bubbles created by the hollow metal spheres embedded in it. Now, at last report, she was looking for companies to begin using her products. Have you guys ever explored or researched any of the exotic new materials coming onto the marketplace and consider them for use in your manufacturing process?
Absolutely. That's how we got started.
Yeah.
We worked with companies like Allied Signal and PPG, and we worked jointly with them to develop these products. Some of them we were jointly with them in our patents. And so, yeah, that's we continually look for these new products. I've heard of that product. I've watched the videos, and there are some exciting advances being made in that area. The most exciting to me is ease in application. As far as applying it to the vehicle. There's several factors to look at: cost, durability, consistency of the product, as far as across, so you get nominal thicknesses and things like that to make sure you're certified within your vehicles.
By the way, the technology I just described to you is 4 years old.
Yeah.
So that should tell you something as well. Do you believe there's a market for inexpensive armor, for the inexpensive armoring of homes that should be explored? Is that something you guys see a future in?
I've actually armored a few homes before, but most of them were wealthy individuals. We've done a number of smart rooms. It was mostly as a favor to individuals that have purchased vehicles from us. It's hard to standardize the size. The challenge with this is the people that probably need this the most can't afford it.
Exactly.
The drive-by shootings and things like that. Even flat ballistic glass is, you're looking at $500 a square foot. Okay. And that's just out of the range for a lot of those individuals. And there's been companies that have started with that idea in mind, but they just couldn't maintain a client base based on that.
My contacts are telling me about new exotic materials that they're developing that I think are going to change the industry in a few years, both in armoring and in clothing. And let's hope that it's inexpensive enough to make a difference for people who can't afford it.
Eventually it will, as long as there's a volume in it. Okay. Generally, if it's lighter, it's going to be more expensive.
What countries are your largest customers? Is it Mexico, Colombia, the U.S.?
No, really, it's Nigeria right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. We
have a facility there. We do a large volume there. It's a mature market. They haven't always had this volume of sale, but yet recently they've had an uptick, even with their currency challenges that they face, and it is an issue for us as well. But
are your biggest Nigerian customers? Do they tend to be government individuals? Do they tend to be corporate individuals, or just crime lords?
No, we don't. Yeah, they're corporate individuals, mostly tied to oil and gas.
Gotcha. So before we wrap things up, is there anything you would like to promote?
Well, I mean, again, we've been around for 27 plus years. We've done over 10,000 cars, and we like to be considered an innovator like you. There's really, I mean, we've done Ferraris, we've done Porsches, we've done the Rezvani tanks, we've done all those type of vehicles, and I think the market is really pushing itself because these cars are becoming much more sophisticated.
Where can customers find you online?
Armormax.com, ARMORMAX.com.
Well, Mark, it was a pleasure to have you on the John Ark Show, and you're always welcome back, sir.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. I might take you up on that.
Okay.